was a layered operation that achieved many objectives, but it facilitated the growth of the state as well. And it facilitated that path of the dystopian nightmare, and the violation of our inherent rights. So that was an inherent example of the federal government's abuse of power.
Oh, Father, tell me, do we get what we deserve? Oh, we get what we deserve.
Holy cow. About a third of the building has been blown away.
And way down we go. Oh, way down we go. Say way down we go. And way down we go. Oh, 'cause they will run you down to the dark. Yes, then they will run you down till you fall. Oh, and they will run you down till you go. Yeah, till you can't crawl no more.
Hey, welcome to another No Way Jose. Today we're going into we're deep diving another one of Dr. Painting's research threads that we've been digging into. We're on part 5, and where we will start, as we've been starting recently with these, is, because we only started a few in, but we will start with a quick recap of last episode, i.e. the last thread, and just kind of a recap of the things that occurred in said thread. Just to remind you before we go through this one. In part 4 is the mailroom, is what it was called. It focused mostly on McVeigh's activities in and around Kingman, Arizona in early 1994, until that August when he once more left the area. Emphasis was placed on strange coincidences surrounding the opening and closing of mailboxes in Kingman at notable times by people of interest. The thread also examined McVeigh's continued attempts to contact radical groups and individuals, sometimes with the assistance of Michael Fortier, as well as the role of PACON handler Don Jarrett in investigating some of these groups and individuals after the Oklahoma City bombing. Some of the individuals and groups investigated by PACON handler Don Jarrett include Jack Oliphant and others associated with the Arizona Patriots. As somewhat of a side note, the thread looked at a couple of McVeigh and Fortier's other, lesser-known friends and acquaintances in Arizona and stories about pre-Oklahoma City bombing surveillance of McVeigh, Fortier, and others. Finally, the thread highlighted patterns seen in phone records other than the Dale Bridges card, including those of Roger Moore in Elohim City. When compared to and overlaid with McVeigh's known movements, these records raise some interesting possibilities and reveal further strange coincidences. And with that, we will get into part 5. And let's go ahead and get into that. This is called Part 5. No snappy title is the title, ironically. She puts taking suggestions here. On April 5th, 1995, McVeigh called a Ryder truck rental company in Lake Havasu from his room at the Imperial Motel in Kingman, Arizona. Immediately after, he called Elohim City. That evening and over the next 2 days, he made the first of several calls to the Bullhead City National Alliance. And you can see his phone records here. For those who are interested, keep in mind, I need to go back. I think I forgot to put in the first few, but I'll try to go back and maybe put the thread and the links in the video description. But if you guys are looking for it, you always can contact me individually, and I can give you the link for it as well. But that way you can go look into all this stuff on your own if you don't feel like I'm doing justice in my presentation. But let's continue. Then on April 8th, this happened. And this is in the Spokesman Review, April 2nd, 1995. Says, all right, let me see. Scroll in. Second, give me a minute. Sorry. FBI agents, all right, here we go. FBI probe traces car at gun rally. FBI agents tracing the background of Oklahoma City bombing suspect Timothy McVeigh have at least one lead that goes to North Idaho. A car from Arizona was spotted at a pro-gun rally in Sandpoint, 11 days before the bombing, sources confirmed Monday. The car, a 1977 Ford two-door, had Arizona license plate ETR 722. That plate is registered to a man who lives in Kingman, Arizona, where a team of at least 60 FBI agents is piecing together McVeigh's past. McVeigh lived in Kingman, about 70 miles southeast of Las Vegas, before the bombing. Authorities are interested in his possible ties to a right-wing paramilitary group known as the Arizona Patriots. Investigators apparently are uncertain whether the man who owns the car was at the Sandpoint meeting. There was no telephone listing under the man's name. Lieutenant Dean Bryce of the Kingman Police Department confirmed Monday his agency's computers had the same address for the name as was on the Fords. Let me see. That's on the Fords. All right, I think that's all of it. Yep. Okay. Oh, never mind. I'm sorry. I screwed up. I looked at that wrong. Here we go. Wait, what did I click on the wrong thing? I'm sorry, guys. Oh, I'm an idiot. I think, no, I'm right. There we go. Sorry, my bad. All right, different things. I was looking at it wrong. 1 second. All right, now, this is continued. I think registration. Bryce wouldn't say whether the man had a criminal record and referred further questions to FBI officials who wouldn't comment. I'm sorry, stumbling over my words. The April 8th rally in Sandpoint was sponsored by the Idaho Citizens Awareness Network. The constitutionalist group known as ICANN includes militia members and sympathizers. Among those in the meeting were its co-founder, Pastor Dave Barley, formerly of Arizona, and Louis Beam, a former Texas Ku Klux Klan leader. Beam, who also has served as Aryan Nation's ambassador at large, has bought land east of Sandpoint and is applying for permits to build a home, sources say. Beam and Aryan Nation's leader Richard Butler stood trial in Fort Smith, Arkansas in 1988 with convicted murderer Richard Snell. The defendants were acquitted of a plot to overthrow the federal government. Snell was executed in Arkansas just hours after the Oklahoma City bombing. Snell had threatened that his death would be avenged. Beam couldn't be reached for comment Monday. Barley and ICANN co-founder Bill Smith of Laclede, Idaho, said they weren't aware of anybody from Arizona at the Sandpoint rally. Barley and Smith said, however, that they didn't know everyone in attendance. Smith estimated that 200 people were at the rally. Barley said he came in late and saw about 80 people. Our meetings are open to all the public and everyone is welcome, Smith said. Before the meeting, about 100 pro-gun demonstrators carried picket signs supporting the Second Amendment outside the Sandpoint Community Center, Smith said. Afterward, they watched a video by Sheriff Richard Mack of Graham County, Arizona. He's a hero to those in the militia movement because of his legal attack on the Brady Act, which requires a waiting period for gun purchases. Barley, co-founder of the Idaho Citizens Awareness Network, moved to Sandpoint from Scottsdale, Arizona in 1991. He assumed the Christian identity ministry from the late Sheldon Emery, a radio minister who preached the message that white people are the true Jews. Barley, 40, now is pastor of the Lord's Covenant Church and its outreach arm known as America's Promise Ministry, which produces radio programs. The sect has its church and office at Great Northern Road near the Sandpoint Airport. On another front, law enforcement authorities throughout the Northwest and elsewhere have been told to watch for 2 rider trucks rented in Fargo, North Dakota, a day after the bombing. The trucks were rented by one or more people who used phony identification and haven't returned the trucks, sources confirmed Monday. The yellow rider trucks are identified as a 1993 Ford with a Texas license plate and a 1994 GMC with a Kentucky plate, sources said. I can't give you a confirmation or even a denial, FBI spokesman Nestor Michiak said when contacted in Washington, D.C. Authorities don't know if the truck thefts are in any way tied to the Oklahoma City bombing, which was carried out with a rider truck. Still, there's increased security at all federal buildings, including new around-the-clock security guards patrolling the U.S. courthouse and adjourning post office in Spokane. All right, one second. All right. In the second week of April 1995, Louis Beam told Sherry Seymour that the week before, he'd visited Richard Wayne Snail's widow to offer her comfort and assurances that his upcoming execution would not be in vain, that he'd be avenged. Later that same week, Seymour attended a meeting of about 25 people at the home of Eva Hale in Hayden Lake, Idaho. At the end of the meeting, as Seymour was walking to her car, Beam mentioned that he was traveling to Mariposa County, California, the next day to visit with Paul Hall, owner and editor of Jubilee magazine, which later became his ally for the Oklahoma City bombing. As mentioned, Richard Van Hazel would later make some startling statements to Seymour, which we have covered in a previous thread. At the end of the thread series, but not necessarily by the end of this thread, I will show how all of these things are connected. But first, we must backtrack and resume where we left off in part 4, when, in the summer of 1994, McVeigh moved out of his house in Golden Valley, Arizona, where he'd lived since returning to the Kingman area earlier that year. In August 1994, McVeigh cashed his return security deposit check in Phoenix, Arizona, and then went to southeast Montana and Sturgis, South Dakota. Here's an excerpt from something, I'm not quite sure. In August 1994, McVeigh attended a motorcycle rally in Sturgis, South Dakota, where he wore that prosecutors later called where he wore what prosecutors later called a disguise, which consisted of a bandana, arguably the least effective disguise ever conceived of. McVeigh must not have thought so, though, because he continued to wear his biker disguise, including at a racing track in Texas where he purchased ammonium nitrate. All right, so here's a photo of this so-called disguise. So let's keep going. From there, he visited Terry Nichols in Marion, Kansas, where Nichols was working as a ranch hand. I'd assume these are photos of said ranch, probably from, I would assume, maybe Wendy's Records. All right, let's keep going. McVeigh told his defense team that he and Nichols considered robbing banks, and in early 1995, he went to Buffalo, Oklahoma, for 2 days, encased one there, but didn't rob it. Afterward, he said he stopped by Roger Moore's in Arkansas and then drove to Florida. Was particularly curious considering the possible ties to the ARA, but maybe we'll come back to that later. McVeigh's movements in August 1994 look something like this. Obviously, sorry for the audio listeners. I'll try to describe it, I guess. This is, looks like not sure where the starting point, the ending point is, but starts in Phoenix, kind of goes, sort of does a loop around, coming up from Phoenix, up through like Vegas, kind of coming back around toward like Utah, Wyoming, coming down, kind of southeast, going towards like, I don't know, like Oklahoma, and then kind of working its way southeast. So, I don't know, kind of big old loop. I'm sorry for the audio people. I'm sorry, that was probably an awful audio description of it, but you're going to have to look at it, do it justice. So that is his movements in 94. So you can see that's tracking his movements going from all across the country. So this looks like it starts in, might even be the Panhandle a little bit, or might even be New Orleans that we're peeking at a little bit here. And then all the way, so up through Phoenix. So he does a big loop, comes up, goes, I'm not I think it is coming from the Phoenix and then coming back down to what looks like Florida somewhat, like kind of that area. So, all right, I'm not going to try to describe these, I think, going forward. You're just going to have to view it to see it. I'm not going to be able to I'm going to sound clunky trying to describe this to the audio listeners. So here's another one, or alternately, depending on the route he took, something like this, unknown route in red. So it's kind of, these are the two basically possible routes. The difference, I guess, is kind of that first leg, and kind of does it do sweep further west, or does it kind of take more of a northwards? It goes just straight northwards. Actually goes a little bit east in one of these ones. So maybe the difference between the two will come into play. Either route placed him in close proximity to a number of events and meetings that some are related to the aforementioned ICANN gathering and key people in it. So FBI probe traces cars at gun rally. I think we read that one. It says FBI is tracing the background of Oklahoma City bombing suspect Timmy McVeigh. Have at least one lead that goes to North Idaho. Yeah, that was the same one I think we read earlier, but it's making the point again. McVeigh arrived in Florida no later than August 30th, 1994. While there, he visited his mother, older sister, and maternal grandparents. Upon leaving, he told her he was heading to Utah to attend survival training for a few weeks. He wasn't, and his movements are well documented for the next few months, but this was something he'd repeat to other members of his family more than once throughout the year. And then here is an excerpt from something that says he had gone to Waco because he sympathized with the Branch Davidians and did not like the way the government had handled matters. Fraser stated that upon her son's departure from her residence in Fort Pierce in August or September 1994, she was told by him that he was returning to Arizona, but that he might not be in Arizona for 2 to 3 weeks because he was going to Utah to participate in some type of survival training. Fraser stated that she did not know if he was going to participate in the training as a student or as an instructor. Fraser stated that this contact with her son in August or September 1994 was the last contact of any type she has had with him directly, either face-to-face, telephonic, or written. Okay. Oops, didn't mean to do that. All right. McVeigh said that after leaving his mother's, he went to the Everglades, and records show that he did register for a gun show in nearby Fort Myers, Florida, on September 3rd and 4th, 1994. He later talked about a previous trip the year before, not too long after he met Moore, where he helped transport a bunch of weapons to Florida so that Moore could sell them to his Cuban connections who were involved in some form of training in the Everglades. 3 days after telling his defense team that, he added some additional details about the earlier 1993 trip. Here in this excerpt it says, I asked him to whom these weapons were going. He said Bob Miller knew people in the Everglades who were training to overthrow Castro, and this material was going to them. This was a $4,000 order. Tim did not know the nationality of the people to whom this merchandise was going. Bob had delivered weapons to these people for a couple of years because Tim knew of him making numerous trips to Florida. This profession was facilitated by Carol's residence in Florida and her separate bank account. Tim said he did not know anything else about this subject. There were other versions of the story told by both McVeigh and Moore, as well as Moore's wife/sister and his mistress, which I expanded on in other writings, including in Book 2, but you get the picture. Although as yet unverified, last month a man who'd been part of Jack Oliphant's various congregations from the Florida and early 1970s until the early 1980s Arizona days told me that Jack had a homeless shelter that most of his flock didn't know about, where, this is in quotes, it had a homeless shelter, was in quotes too, and then in quotes, Cuban refugees were debriefed. So then she provides a link to the archive for it. Let me look at it. This just goes through a Program to Chill episodes for those interested in that. Which, good series, by the way. Whichever anti-Castro Cuban exile group he was visiting, if any, McVeigh said that while he was in Florida, he bought a shotgun for Terry Nichols to use during the Roger Moore robbery. McVeigh said after leaving the Everglades, he headed to Gulfport, Mississippi. When asked why, he said, and here's an excerpt, it says, I asked him why he visited Gulfport, Mississippi in September of 1994. He stated that Roger Moore, a.k.a. Bob Miller, and Spotlight magazine had discussed the fact that there was a private company in Gulfport, Mississippi, which purportedly was buying vehicles from the Soviet Union, repainting them, and then selling them to the UN. He gathered from the news articles where it was located and drove there to check it out for himself. When he arrived, he learned that the vehicles were harmless and there didn't appear to be any impropriety. Bob Miller had also given him a couple of other places to stop to check out concerning so-called government conspiracies. Tim stated that at that time, Bob Miller was getting into the Patriot scene after receiving a subscription from Spotlight as a gift from Tim. While in Florida, he checked out some detention centers in the Everglades that supposedly were being used to harbor troops to attack anti-government resistors. He found this to be untrue. I don't know if it's related, but when McVeigh was in Florida or on his way there, an 18-minute call was placed from Elohim City to an aged reverend in West Palm Beach, Florida, who'd previously lived in Muldrow, Oklahoma, close to Elohim City. Here's the thing, also maybe unrelated. After the Oklahoma City bombing, more than one person associated with the larger Christian identity movement would tell the FBI about CI groups in Florida. One man who'd known the Snells for many years and had been part of the movement was contacted about a letter he'd sent to Arkansas Governor Jim Guy Tucker on April 21st, 1995. In the letter, the man warned Tucker that Snell's followers would try to revenge Snell and that this would include assassinations of government officials. When the FBI came to ask him about the letter in early May 1995, he was asked specifically about Robert Millar of Elohim City. And while unable or unwilling to identify a specific threat, by a specific person, he threw out a couple of possibilities, including a CI pastor in New Mexico. He then said this, which, by the way, for those who didn't catch on the acronym here, CI, Christian Identity. But all right, reading this excerpt, it says Madwell also said that a man in West Palm Beach, Florida, is currently training Christian Identity soldiers to prepare for future bombings. This man supposedly has photographs of the inside rooms and hallways of a U.S. Postal Service facility, which will be the target of a future bombing. Madwell told Beam and other leaders, which are in the inner circle, or circle number 1, of the movement, which has a total of 9 circles. A decision to carry out a bombing, such as the one in Oklahoma City, would originate in the inner circle and eventually be passed to the 9th circle, where someone would hire a person such as Timothy McVeigh to do the actual bombing. Madwell felt McVeigh is a low-level member of the movement on the outer fringes of the 9th circle. Okay. Either way, after his fact-finding mission, McVeigh headed to Oklahoma, but what he did on the way depends on when he was telling the story. In one of his earliest versions, McVeigh said that after leaving Mississippi, and then here's some more excerpts, says after this, he traveled back to Arkansas and got the 9 kin packs from Bob for 10 apiece. Tim said that Bob volunteered to sell the kin sticks and thought that Tim would put them to good use. The kin sticks, kin packs, those are explosive stuff. I forget exactly what. I'm not an explosive expert. Then also, these are the small there we go. And these are the small explosive devices consisting of nitro and fertilizer. So that's what I was getting at. In a later version, he'd gotten these items from Moore. He said it happened after a case in the bank in Oklahoma while on his way to Florida. Not after, and rather than Moore selling these items to him, McVeigh inadvertently acquired them for him, whatever that means. And later than that, he and Moore said, and here is some more excerpts, the expressions on Mr. McVeigh's face was that of anger. Mr. McVeigh stated that if Moore ever decided to testify against him, that there was enough evidence available to sink Roger Moore. Mr. McVeigh stated that during the months August to September 1994, Moore sold him 9 kinesticks at $10 each. McVeigh stated that Moore had cases of the explosive kinesticks and that he didn't sell them to just anybody. McVeigh stated that Roger Moore was involved in the sale of several other things and that Moore was very much anti-government. Mr. McVeigh stated that he made several kinestick purchases from Moore and that Moore even commented to him that he didn't mind selling him the kinesticks because he knew that he, McVeigh, would put them to good use. And here's more. It says, I told Mr. McVeigh, that Roger Moore told me that he was glad that the FBI did not search his house the day after the bombing, because if they had done so, that they would have found more weapons in his home than were found at the Davidian compound in Waco, Texas. Mr. McVeigh immediately replied the FBI would have found cases of kinesticks. On September 12th to 13th, I'm calling him Mr. McVeigh. On September 12th to 13th, McVeigh stayed at the El Siesta Motel in Vian, Oklahoma, about 25 miles from Oklahoma City, or for Elohim City. As we all know, according to the federal indictment against McVeigh, Nichols, and others unknown, the Oklahoma City bombing conspiracy began on September 13th. In part 4, she says, I may have misspoken. What I should have said is if there's a point what she should have said was if there is to be a point at which a conspiracy involving Elohim City began, I'd argue a more correct date would be a year earlier, in October 1993. So then she's referring how in a previous thread she had said that maybe that October might be a better point to point to. Let's go on. After leaving Oklahoma, McVeigh went to Las Vegas to attend the Soldier of Fortune convention. Let's read these excerpts about his time there. This is from Aberration right here. So Moore must have forgotten about the explosives he gave and sold McVeigh, as well as a number of other things in his life, because he told the FBI that he never sold anything that would have brought the attention of the ATF, and had even stopped selling guns because of difficulties raised by the Brady Bill. Another thing Roger Moore forgot was that he and McVeigh were both at the 1994 Soldier of Fortune convention that ran from September 15th to 18th, and according to DOJ gun show records provided by the DOJ to the Jones team, McVeigh was working a table registered under Moore's name. Also in attendance were a number of white power spokesmen who McVeigh attempted to call in the days leading up to the bombing, including Kirk Lyons and Dave Holloway, both closely associated with Elohim City and suspected German operative Andy Strassmeyer, both spokespeople for Cause, whose offices, like Elohim City, McVeigh would call in the days before the bombing. Also in attendance at the 1994 SOF convention was Utah skinhead leader Johnny Bangirder. While standing around a row of tables packed with militia and white power keepsakes, Bangirder had the unfortunate privilege of meeting an ATF informant from Las Vegas named John Brenner, who was congregated near Moore's table. All right. Bangirder recalled that Moore, using his alias Bob Miller, wanted to give us, not sell us, but give us a safety flare converted into a shoulder-fired missile launcher. If you just glanced at it, it kind of looked like a toy, but it was supposed to be able to divert heat-seeking missiles and thwart infrared searches. We accepted the launcher, and at the same time, Brenner tried to give us another type of fake rocket launcher, which was supposed to launch grenades. They were very cheap-looking. You could tell that those were bullshit, so I declined that offer. Not long after, Brenner started showing up at Bangirder's house, trying to get him to take part in a number of plots, including trafficking illegal firearms and stolen military hardware, specifically night vision goggles and C4 explosives, killing federal judges in a bombing plot using, you might have guessed, an ANFO-loaded Ryder truck, all defining features of the PatCon operations. Bangirder, who during his time in Aryan Nations had learned the ropes of a setup and the signs of a sting, was suspicious of Brenner and rebuffed his efforts. Written about extensively in my next book, Redacted. Brenner was persistent, though, and kept trying until one day he suddenly disappeared. All right, and then more on that. It was also similar to and running concurrent with a PatCon operation that involved a gun store in Phoenix named, no joke, Lone Wolf Guns, which sold automatic weapons to right-wing extremists and outlaw biker gangs. More recently, the curiously named gun shop was implicated in the Fast and Furious scandal. Years after he disappeared, Brenner would write Bangirder and ask his forgiveness, admitting that he himself had been busted on a weapons charge and subsequently induced to entrap other people in exchange for leniency. During late 1994 and early 1995, though, Brenner was still busy trying to trap Johnny Bangirder. All right, and then here's more on this. I think going to the Bangirder stuff. Let's go this. I guess this goes into Brenner's arrest. As Brenner was arrested along with 60 others in a joint investigation by the Metropolitan Police Department and the ATF. The investigation, known as Pruno 2, targeted street crimes throughout the Las Vegas Valley and culminated in July. In the raids, investigators seized a large cache of weapons, pipe bombs, and other explosive devices. According to federal court records, Brenner is charged based in part on the following events. On November 3rd, 1994, a man transferred an RPB M10 45 caliber pistol, 12 magazines, and other related firearm equipment to an undercover officer. The man also agreed to manipulate a bolt for the gun to make it a fully automatic weapon and later provided a silencer that would reduce this report of a firearm by 5 to 7 decibels. On November 21st, 1995, a man agreed to sell a machine gun to an undercover officer for $1,400. A semi-automatic Uzi pistol was later manipulated and transferred to the officer. March 7, 1996, a man sold an RPB M10 9mm converted machine gun to undercover agents at the Federal Arms Depot on West Sirius Avenue. In July, Las Vegas, Captain Ray Friend described some of the people arrested in Pruno 2 as extremists, an apparent reference to Brenner. And then that's the end of that. Goes here at the 1994 Soldier of Fortune convention, not too long after making a trip to Montana, which Moore also did that summer. McVeigh met Eva Vale of the Identity Movement, who was passing out the Patriot Report. They spoke, and she gave him a copy of Day 51, a documentary about Waco. After the SOF con, McVeigh made his way to Marion, Kansas, where he stayed until Nichols quit his farm job there at the end of the month. Nichols may not have been so hospitable had he known that McVeigh had been sleeping with his wife, at least according to McVeigh. Here's an excerpt. As Mr. McVeigh also stated that he had several sexual affairs with Marie Faye during the time that he lived with Marie Faye and Terry Nichols. McVeigh stated that they had sex during the times that Terry was at work. I told Mr. McVeigh that Marie could easily deny the allegations, and he immediately told me to just mention his waterbed when I spoke to her. that she would know what it meant. Mr. McVeigh said the affairs occurred during the summer of 1994. You think you know a guy, she says. McVeigh's movements in September 1994 look something like this. And then I'm not even going to try to explain this one. I guess kind of a little bit. It looks like it starts from Kansas, goes west, a tiny bit south at the same time, gets to Vegas. Then you kind of get an eastward, southward travel at that point, working all the way down to, kind of Florida and kind of doing a circle around around the, how do I put this, the tip of Florida kind of deal. You'll get a better idea, obviously, if you're watching. So, and then McVeigh, often accompanied by Nichols' movements in October 1994, and for the remainder of that year, left a dizzying paper trail of phone, motel, and other records as they traveled across the country. In a series of lengthy statements given to his defense attorneys, Nichols would tell just as many conflicting versions of where they went, what they were doing, and what he knew about other individuals, most notably Roger Moore. A fuller accounting of this is already in Book 2 manuscript, has been for a few years, and I've covered some of this in past threads, including but not limited to this one. So if those want to go into that, they can. But what they were doing was compiling bomb-making components, stashing them, and then moving them. They were also making friends. October found McVeigh, mostly with Nichols, in Marion, Kansas, Kingman and Flagstaff, Arizona, Grand Junction, Colorado, back to Kansas, including Junction City, Pauls Valley, and Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, Dallas, Texas, back to Kansas, back to Flagstaff and Kingman, Arizona, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and back to Kansas. Taken together, it looks something like this. I'm not even going to try to describe this one. This one's way too all over the fucking place. So that one, this route's bizarre. You guys can, if you care enough. Or alternatively, depending on the route to Colorado, something like this. Had to combine some of the Kansas locations. Another one I couldn't even begin to try to explain. So you're just gonna miss that as audio. Sorry. In early October, McVeigh, using his real name, rented a storage space in Kingman where he stashed explosives and made 3 cash payments on the space throughout that month. The storage unit was found vacant in February 1995. All right. During their travels all over God's green earth, or brown as the case may be, McVeigh camped in the deserts of Arizona, east of Kingman, near Oliphants, for nearly 3 weeks, while Nichols went to Vegas and Utah briefly, afterward rejoining McVeigh on his camping trip. As fate would have it, alien implant guy Stephen Colburn, now on the run from Johnny Law, was also camping out in the desert at this time, sometimes in mine shafts. Evidenced by his fugitive journal and letters he wrote Roger Moore, and a phone call he placed to his friend using a Cholo accent and identifying him as Carlos in case somebody was tapping the phone. And then here's some excerpts we can go through. Says, I think these are examples of his little diary. I think says, woke up this morning, it was clear again. Continued up the road until I got the flat top mountain road. And then knew I'd gone too far. Turned back and found it. Would be hard to see in the dark. Pile of stones marks it. Went up into the mountains and the road was pretty bad. Then it got worse. Okay, whatever. In the bottom one, the last paragraph here does go into, he calls Bob from one payphone. He had to receive a letter from these guys. So okay, I don't know what the obviously shows he's talking to Moore, I think is what's showing. Here's another one. Keep in touch with Bob. So, then talking about his Cholo accent. So I'm just looking through this. So just more. It's from his little diaries. Here is more letters of his. So here we go. So here, Bob, hope you're doing well. Really hope you're doing better than I am. I think last time I spoke to you, a hearing was pending as to whether the evidence would be thrown out because of a legal search. Well, it wasn't. The judge wouldn't even listen to my side of it. And the search was legal, even though it was really illegal under every rule in the book. So much for justice in the federal kangaroo court. I was thereafter given a choice of either ratting out my buddies, turning on the 50 cal on both. Otherwise, I would spread 3 years in federal prison. Could not in good conscience make a deal with the enemy to turn in weapons. It would never under any circumstances turn in a buddy, and I could not go to prison either. Okay, so there's just this is kind of hard to make out anyways, but just notes from him to Bob. More on that, dear Bob, from him to Bob Moore. On October 16th, 1994, McVeigh's grandfather died. His father tried to reach him at Fort Ears, but Fort Ears said McVeigh had been in Utah for the past few weeks. McVeigh said when he finally did connect with his father, he told him he'd been in Utah, but really he'd been camping in Colorado and Kansas with Nichols. At the end of the year, he used his alibi with his family again, which we'll cover in the next part of the series. Lest you jump to conclusions and assume that McVeigh had to be meeting with Johnny Bangirder, don't jump so fast. We'll get to that. While I admit that is, of course, possible, suffice it to say the bombastic Bangirder was not the only person with a group conducting paramilitary training in Utah, and most certainly not the only one doing so in the deserts of Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico at this time. And while McVeigh would definitely make a weird appearance in Bangirder's neck of the woods very soon, during this period, McVeigh found time to hook up with his father in Vegas and attend and man tables at gun shows, including in Kingman. On the other gun shows, big ones were going in other areas of Arizona as well as in Salt Lake City, which is closer to Colorado, where McVeigh had a table at a gun show. In fact, through October and November, during their camping trip in the desert, McVeigh and Nichols moved explosives around from storage spaces in Kingman and Flagstaff, where McVeigh had spent time earlier that year. McVeigh's defense team never understood why he'd chosen Flagstaff 2 hours east of Kingman, about halfway to New Mexico. Speaking of, both the murderous Kehoe brothers and the mysterious Ward brothers, one of whom is sometimes claimed to be a McVeigh lookalike, had deep movement ties in the movement of in New Mexico. So here we go. Here's something. What is this? It says Phillips sources have approximated 80 full-time adults residing on Elohim City. Phillips advised that after the Oklahoma City bombing, he was contacted by a confidential source who advised that Sonny Ward, residents of Elohim City, bears a striking resemblance to John Doe number 2. Ward is known to have a tattoo of a coyote howling at the moon on his right upper arm. Ward's parents, former residents of Elohim City, are believed to have moved to Belen, New Mexico, a suburb of Albuquerque, a few days prior to the April 19, 1995 Oklahoma City bombing, out of concern for the right-wing element. Phillips' source advised that they had moved from that location to Valdosta, Georgia, where they were employed at a chicken plant. Phillips stated the recently generated information from his confidential sources had been passed to investigators working the OK Bomb Task Force in Oklahoma City. Ward's brother, Tony Ward, is also a resident of Elohim City and has been characterized by sources as capable of doing anything and violent. Phillips additionally identified Priscilla Ward, age 8 to 10, and Susie Ward, older sister, age unknown, as sisters of Sonny Ward. These two sisters are believed to be currently residing at Elohim City. Phillips advised he would remain cognizant to any information pertaining to Elohim City that would be of benefit and recontact Special Agent Saros upon receipt. Additionally, Phillips stated he would contact confidential sources to determine whether they would be in a position to obtain information at the direction of the FBI in furtherance of the OK Bomb matter. Here's more on Ward. He's saying he's... So on November 17, 1995, Tony Ward, white male, DOB, March 16, 1972, 6 foot, 240, he's a big boy. Brown hair, brown eyes, brown goatee, worn for the last approximate 1.5 years. Tattoo, right shoulder, advised from approximately August 1993 to February 18, 1995. Yep, he lived at Elohim City. He was probably living trailer number 2 at South Main Street, Belen. He was definitely in New Mexico. He would have no idea who Timothy McVeigh would possibly be calling at Elohim City or why he would be contacting Elohim City. He does not know McVeigh and has never associated with him, Terry Nichols, or anyone else possibly connected with the Oklahoma City bombing on April 19, 1995. His brother, Peter Jr., has never said anything regarding McVeigh, Nichols, or anyone that he might know who was connected with the bombing, and Peter Jr. was reportedly in Elohim City on April 19, 1995. And then we have here Sonny Ward advised from about the from about the summer of 1993 to the middle of February 1995. He resided at or in proximity to Elohim City, Oklahoma. In both October and December 1994, he was still residing in Oklahoma and was not in New Mexico. The Keyhoes had ties to Oliphant, and the Ward brothers were closely tied to Elohim City, where one person reported had been a Ward brother who was with Mahon and Strassmeyer when they met McVeigh at the 1993 Tulsa gun show. So here's this. It says he normally wore some type of military hat. It was impression that Pete was born somewhere in Africa and migrated to the U.S. several years prior to him living at Elohim City. On one occasion, redacted recalls acts of violence being committed against an individual who had lived at Elohim City. This individual, named unknown, was being evicted from the location due to the fact they believed he might be a homosexual. Okay. As this individual was getting into his motor vehicle to leave, Strassmeyer, Miller, and several other adult males began shooting at his vehicle as he attempted to drive away out of Elohim City. Redacted did not believe this individual was shot or injured. Okay. Peter LNU often spoke regarding his displeasure with the U.S. government, and it was Redacted's personal opinion that Pete may be involved in the bombing of the Oklahoma City federal bombing. Redacted felt this was the case because Pete was an extremely large individual, and he would be the type of person with a type of disposition that would assist Timothy McVeigh in loading large drums of explosives onto a Ryder truck. Redacted also had the opportunity to look at the photograph of unsub number 2, displayed on or about the time of the Oklahoma City bombing. Redacted believed that this artist's conception looked very similar to that individual known to him as Pete LNU. Redacted had no specific knowledge of Pete LNU involved in any criminal activities regarding the bombing of the Oklahoma City federal building, nor did he reside at the location when that incident occurred. Redacted was questioned regarding specific threats. Redacted heard anyone making regard the overthrow of the U.S. government or bombing events in the U.S., and Redacted indicated that Bob Millar had said on occasion to a group of people that we are going to have to blow this place up. Redacted did not specifically say what location they were talking about, but noted that he was normally referencing Oklahoma City. When questioned regarding the relationship between Timothy McVeigh, Strassmeyer, and Pete, Redacted indicated that both Strassmeyer and Pete met an individual named Timothy at a gun show in Oklahoma City. Redacted recalled Strassmeyer claiming that Timothy or Tim could get anything they needed, and Redacted took that to mean weapons and explosives. Thereafter, Redacted recalls Strassmeyer mentioning Tim's name on a frequent basis. They also had ties to some of the ICANN contingent mentioned at the start of this thread. The FBI indeed investigated the Ward brothers. Kind of. And here's this. It says lead control number 6502 from the FBI. It says Lieutenant John Haney, Oklahoma Highway Patrol, advised on April 27, 1995, a confidential source told him that Oklahoma subject number 2 resembles Sonny Ward of Elohim City, Oklahoma. Ward recently left for New Mexico, is now believed to be working at Chicken House in Valdosta, Georgia. Ward was present in Oklahoma during the time of the bombing, having left Oklahoma approximately 1.5 weeks ago. Ward has a tattoo of a coyote howling at the moon on his upper right arm. The confidential source described Ward as a white male who's approximately 19 years old. All right, and then it gives a description of what he looks like. All right. Then he goes, an absolutely disgusting letter Peter Wart wrote to the Mahon brothers, which I obtained in 2009, very early on in my efforts. So let's try to read this. It says, Dear brothers Dennis and Don, so what have you guys been up to? Did you read in Time magazine about Mike and Mark? I was shocked to see them guys in there. They both indicted for robbing banks in Ohio, Iowa, Missouri, and Wisconsin. And the feds think that they had bombed Centennial Olympic Park in Atlanta. Some guy named Glenn Wilburn, maybe something says that all roads to Oklahoma lead to Elohim City, says Jewish Wilburn, I think is what he's saying. Wilburn says that he collected a telephone record when Timothy McVeigh called Elohim City 2 weeks before the bombing, and he also said that Timothy McVeigh had visited the camp in 93, but I don't recall seeing him up there, And it's like I told Keith, I think they are the ones that set off the thing and not taking the blame for it, the feds. Wilburn said that he can't come up with any hard evidence, so what in the hell is his problem? This piece of fucking shit, Wilburn. Are they still harassing you? I mean the feds. I'm still looking for a job. Dennis, I want to tell you that I'm sorry about your scope. I'll be sure to get you another one. Okay. All right, so just talking shit about Glenn Wilburn, which for all I know, he was a really good man. All right, let's keep going. God damn it! Dang it! Just give me a sec. Zoom up and then it always. There we go. All right, I hope that Dan didn't lose his job. We had quite an appearance when we were on the road to Alaska. It was very pretty country. We seen the Northern Lights. It was cool, man. Have you ever seen the Northern Lights? We worked at a gold mine, didn't see any gold, but we made, is it $140, I think, dollars for one day? Pretty good. Spent 5 days, something. That was not something. They held us at gunpoint, man. Oh, geez. They had 5 or 6 cop cars surrounding us. I thought maybe something, we had killed somebody, maybe run over somebody. It was not funny. Later on, I will tell you the rest. But I'm going to stop writing for right now. Something going on. Pete, hail victory, white power, then a little swastika. Dennis sent me another white beret, something business card, something. Okay, so here's just letters between the two, between them. But more on all these brothers later. There were, of course, sightings of McVeigh and John Doe, too, in the area at this time. One of McVeigh's former supervisors who managed a paintball joint recalled seeing a dead ringer for John Doe 2 who came to his office with a co-worker McVeigh's shortly before Fortier called there frantically looking for McVeigh. He described the man Manuel as Indian or Hispanic male, stocky, about 6 foot tall with heavy eyebrows and an outdoor complexion. Manuel, he said, was unusual looking, had a military haircut, and wore camo. He saw the man again, he said, in the fall of 1994 at an Ace Hardware store in Flagstaff. As for McVeigh, and now here's an excerpt, it's attorney analysis. This is a redacted 302, which claims that a Ron blank deals methamphetamine in rural Arizona at a place called The Shed, which is located outside Kingman. The witness stated that between October 1994, he/she went to The Shed on 2 occasions to purchase methamphetamine and saw McVeigh on both occasions. The first time, McVeigh was sitting on a couch with Ron L&U and was introduced to the person by the name of Timmy. The second time, Tim McVeigh spoke about white supremacy and how they were ready for a revolution and the government was taking everyone's rights away, etc. The witness then recently recognized McVeigh from news accounts. And here's a photo of him. Then I regret to inform you, just as I have no snappy title, I have no snappy conclusion for this thread. Then it says, next up, part 6, the Christmas presents and the construction project, which may actually be the last in the series, depending on whether I can curb my wordiness. I can give you a little bit of a spoiler, since I have talked to Wendy. I do not think this will be the last one, so don't fear. I think there will be more of these to come, but if there's only one, that's fine too. But I do want to take a moment now that we are done for today to remind you guys how you can support this show. If you want to do so without chipping in a buck, you can just leave a like, share, subscribe, comment, 5-star review on iTunes or Spotify. You can follow me on Twitter at TowerGangJose. These are all actions you can take that don't cost a cent, and they all help to grow the show. So if you just want to help out, those also take you very little time, if any time at all. If you do want to directly support the show with money, I appreciate that. And you can do that at patreon.com/nowayjose2020. At the lowest level at $2, you get the access to early episodes, much exactly like this one. I usually try to do 1 to 2 episodes a week. Usually have about 4 or so behind the paywall at any given time. So that's weeks of content behind the paywall. You also get access to an ad-free RSS feed. And you get priority for the call-ins. And you get access to the pre-show on me and Austin's weekly call-in show, Already Dead, which is on Tuesdays on both of our platforms. The highest level is my sponsors. I read them off every episode. It's a big thank you to them and for everything they do. I have my former co-host on Tower Gang at Tower Gang Toad, also at Abrogate D's, at ZOVRECK, at _InfitZeal, Tim Tuttle, at Jolly and Klebold, Will Bell's Delicious Blueberry Rabbit Eye Wine. Big fan of the show, Torrin May, and then Jordan Peterson as well. With that, we are going to go ahead and get out of here. Appreciate everyone who's been coming around for these. I hope you're enjoying them. We'll be back with another one soon. With that, we are out.